Now, many of you just bypassed the first video of my sort of explanation or of our current environment, and that none of us can sit there and make any plans, including school systems, by and large, because of the lack of consensus with regards to this virus situation. And as I said in that first segment video, you know, I don't know if there's a proper road, because people are going to have very, very strong emotions and strong feelings about it. Now, is it because they necessarily are, it's fear? I think a lot of it, I think a lot of the reasons that you have such a disparate position on this situation is because it's coming from parents. And our most prized possession are our children. And of course, we don't want to ever put our children at risk. I understand that. I've got 5. And so, you know, I do understand and appreciate, and I have one. I have a child that any kind of respiratory situation takes him down for the count. So we always have to be prepared for that. So I don't want anybody to ever think that I'm somehow, you know, disregarding people's concerns that consider themselves high risk. I don't. I do take it serious. Now, at the same time, I'm an attorney, and under that hat that I wear as an attorney, I look at the situation, and the reality of the situation is that the law doesn't have empathy, doesn't have sympathy, it doesn't care. It's just written down, guys. And so when it comes to this COVID situation, the federal government did not provide waivers. We didn't want them to provide waivers. Remember, back in April and May, did not want DeVos to sit there and cut the schools any slack with regards to the standard of FAPE. Bravo, we won. But at the same time, and when I say we won, many schools were hoping that the Trump administration would water down those standards along with Congress. That didn't happen. Okay? So, you know, good job, DeVos. Good job, Trump. I appreciate that. But moving into the fall, well, now we got a problem, because the state health orders are not uniform. And if you watched my first video, guys, I went into detail about civics and the fact that, you know, people need to stop sitting there blaming Trump for not having some kind of uniform national plan. That's not how our federal government works. Federal government provides logistics and support and some monetary assistance. But this is a state health issue, because in order to enforce it, you need police powers, and the states have police powers, not the federal government. I don't want Trump doing anything about it. I don't want him usurping what a governor is doing or can do or won't do. That's what the state court system is for, if you disagree with it. Okay? And so every state where people are disagreeing with the actions of the governor, they're filing lawsuits against the governor. And the court system will figure that out. That I can promise you. And so I absolutely love our separations of powers. And so I just do not look ever to the federal government to sit there and save us and solve this problem. It's not their job. Did they provide logistical support? Yes, they did. Are they continuing to do that? Yes, they are. You know, did they pass this crazy bill, you know, back a few months ago that were military hospital ships available, military hospital tents? Absolutely, all those resources were available, and not one state went without, not one state. So, and I'm talking at the height of this, we still don't know what this positive rate means. We still don't have a clue, because the corresponding death rate isn't jumping, corresponding with the positive rates. And I know people will say, well, you got to wait. You know, that's an echo. We'll see. But I'm taking more of a positive viewpoint that, yay medical system that we've since figured this out a little bit more, and they are doing a far, far better job at understanding how this impacts people and how to save them, as you know, as comparative to March and April when we didn't know. So we do know now. So thank God for our doctors and our nurses. Okay, so Mobile just announced that they're going to go, Mobile County in Alabama, so they just announced that they're going to go virtual starting out, which I absolutely suspect is going to create a snowball effect in Alabama. We still don't know what's going to happen in New Mexico. Still don't have, and I'm only talking about the states right now that where I have offices, guys, because we have to monitor all of that. Texas, I think it's going to be, you know, similar to Alabama, where it's going to be a hit and miss. I don't think it's going to be a state mandated closure, but I think that individual pockets will do virtual learning. Well, how do you do that? If there's no state order shutting down all of the schools uniformly, okay, and then your local school board decides that it wants to shut down virtual learning, that's going to create an absolute disparity. And I know some of you are like, well, that's not fair. It should be the same everywhere. Life isn't fair, and it's not going to be the same everywhere. You're going to have to deal with what's going on where you live. And you need to stop sitting there focusing on what's happening nationally. All right, because what you're hearing in the national news is not realistic to your location. And so therefore you also shouldn't be pushing your perspective of your neck of the woods on other people, on Facebook world or wherever, because it's a very limited perspective. And you need to deal with the problems that are in front of you. And that's with your local school board, and that's with your local services, and that's with, because that's who's in control. The state education agency in the majority of our states just simply don't have that amount of power to sit there and dictate to a local school what they can or cannot do, you know, outside of a state mandated shutdown by the governor. Okay, so let's work on it from that perspective. So from that perspective, let's say let's go through a couple scenarios. Let's say you live in a school system where they're going to reopen, but they're going to be doing staggered days, whatever, okay? But they're also going to be offering parents a virtual option. Okay, well, in that particular situation, the staggered days don't necessarily apply to your child that has an IEP. Why is that? Because the standard of, and the requirement, the legal requirement on your public school system who has 100% of the legal duty to provide a FAPE remains. They can't get rid of it. There's nothing they can do about it. So they can sit there and offer staggered days, but with regards to what the IEP team has to do to provide a FAPE, what is a free and appropriate public education for your child? And if schools are open and there's no state health order shutting the school down, shutting all the schools down, then it becomes a local decision on how they're going to do this, which means that the schools are open, which means the capability to provide a FAPE exists. And if outside tutoring, if outside therapeutic companies are open and willing to provide services, if private therapeutic settings are open, then I'm sorry, school system, you're on the hook, man. You have a responsibility to provide a FAPE, and that's not partial day FAPE, that's not half a day FAPE, that's not 3 days a week FAPE. It is FAPE, free and appropriate public education. Now, for those schools like Mobile that decided that it wanted to start the school year with virtual learning for all students, you're going to be in for a world of hurt. Why is that? Yes, it's not discriminatory because you're treating all the students the same. But are all the students the same? No, they're not. Because you have a segment of your student population that does not learn through distant learning. Those parents were patient during the spring, and they didn't hit you with a huge amount of due process complaints over distant learning plans, because I urged my clients not to make a big deal, that this was temporary. Well, I have a different position starting in August. And that is due process, mediation, whatever you can do. Fight tooth and nail. If you're one of those parents that your child needs to return and can return safely, and if there are, I mean, there's going to be staff that are willing to do in-person services, guys. And I'm not saying force staff. Okay, there's going to be people that are going to be available, and if not, then send them to a therapeutic private facility and let them do it, because they're going to remain open as well, just like they are now, being able to provide services. The only thing Mobile needs to do is cut a check to pay for those services. But the parents need to move in a situation to where the local Board of Education has shut the schools down in order to continue with distant learning. Your child still requires to be provided a free and appropriate public education. Do they have the capability of doing it? That's the question. Yes, they do. I don't care that they shut down, okay, but they weren't mandated to shut down by the state. There is no state health order mandating that they shut down. There is no penalty of, losing funds or state or the police coming in, because the superintendent reopened the school, violating the order. If there is no state health order shutting them down, then at that point, that was a local board decision. And if that was a local board decision, then that means that they do have the capability of serving children, a segment of the student population that require those services. And if they can't do it, and if they choose not to do it, that's fine. That's their option. So the local school board said, no, we're not going to do that. That doesn't mean that you don't need to dig into your freaking pocket and pay for services somewhere where they are open and they can provide in-person services. I'm just not going to accept that excuse. So that's scenario 2, like Mobile did. They shut down, virtual option, and those of you that were going to start virtual anyway, I mean, that great. Is that FAPE for your child though? Is it distant learning just because you made that choice? I feel more comfortable with the virtual option. That's fine. And if your public school system is stupid enough not to create a traditional IEP of what FAPE is, and then provide you the option for virtual learning that is a reduced offering based upon parent preference, but this is FAPE. Not virtual learning. That's not FAPE. So in my third video, it's going to be a split screen because I'm going to have my examples up there of a redacted IEP, a prior written notice, and an example of a virtual IEP. Okay, because that's still what I recommend. I still recommend that be the course of action for schools, for school IEP teams, for parents to recommend. Now, why is that? Because I do believe that in the entirety of the school year, the 2021 school year, I do believe that this disruption in the beginning is not going to last for the entirety of the school year. In fact, I don't think it's going to last. I'm optimistic. I just don't think it's going to last. I don't know, maybe first 9 weeks. And then after that, I think that it'll be reintegrated into a traditional school setting. So I think it's dumb not to create a IEP, like a traditional IEP, one that is developed and designed to provide FAPE. Okay? Because at that point, when schools start and your child's reintegrated into the system, then the IEP team already has the plan. We're just now triggering it. And then you can take segments of that plan in good faith agreement and create a distant learning plan. But that distant learning plan is not FAPE, guys. That's just your temporary agreement that you made with the school. If you are a parent that is opting for distant learning because or whatever reason, you know. I'm going to get into those children that fit into high risk categories, that have medical notes, medical letters, medical recommendations. That's not going to be a lot of you. And I'm talking about comparative to the millions of children that have IEPs. But they exist, and so you need direction as well. And I'm going to provide that in my third video. But what I'm talking about now is the parent preference, meaning that you have, let's say yourself as a parent is high risk, or let's say you have a family member, not the child with the IEP, but you have another family member, let's say an elderly grandparent living at home, and those are your concerns. But the child themselves is not in a high risk category. At that point, that becomes a parent preference. The school system, under their legal duty, guys, under their legal duty, like I said, do not sit there and demand the law show empathy, sympathy, anything like that. It's not made for that. It is cold. It is heartless. It is the law. So when I sit there and I say that, don't sit there and go, God, that's mean-spirited. Well, that's the law, guys. And it's just no other way. I'm not going to sit there and baby you. Too many people do that. I'm not going to baby you. I'm going to give you the information exactly like you need to hear it. And I'm just telling you that if you have yourself or another family member living in your home, but yet your child is not in a high-risk category, meaning that there's not legitimate medical recommendations stating that, then at that point it becomes your preference that your child not return to in-school services. And many parents are going to be provided that option. That's fine. But understand that your FAPE is this. You're opting for less than FAPE. And a school system has every right in the world, the IEP team, to sit there and protect themselves legally from your preference of, you know, and that's fine. I understand the preference. Okay, these are odd times right now. You need to protect your family. But you can't sit there and tell the public institution that has a legal duty to your child, well, I know you can do your legal duty, but because of family situation, not because of the child's health, but because of family conditions, I'm opting for less, but then I'm going to get mad at you in 6 months because my child didn't progress, and then I'm going to file due process against you. You just can't do that. Unless the school's stupid enough not to create a base IEP. And if the school system is stupid enough to create a distant learning plan and that's it, and they have nothing else to back it up, then at that point, yeah, you would have a case. Because the school system had the wherewithal, they had the information, they had the knowledge, they had the capability to provide your child a FAPE, and they acquiesced to your feelings of an alternative, even though they knew that this was FAPE. You would have a case.
Is attempting to reach you on.
But at the same time, I don't recommend you do that. I recommend that there be a continuity of a plan. Create a base IEP. Then, if you prefer distant learning, create a distant learning plan where you sit there and you take the goals, or you take whatever, and you do the best you can in good faith with your distant learning plan. But you still have this. At whatever point within the school year, you can return to in-school services, or when you're comfortable, that IEP is ready to be activated. It's ready to go, baby. There you go. And then all the school system and the IEP team needs to do is draft a prior written notice to explain that this is what FAPE is, but the parent has preferred this option, and the school system is agreeing to do it that way, with the understanding that this is what legal FAPE is. That way everybody has a plan moving forward. And we're not just flittering and fluttering at the whims and the winds that are changing. That will give us a path moving forward. And then once we have that foundational path, guys, then you're fine with whatever nooks and turns and whatever happens in front of us. Okay? You need to gain control over the situation. Create a base IEP, just like it's a traditional school year. And then at that point, believe me, it's going to calm you down. Because then you have your base IEP. Then at that point, you can create a distant learning plan. You can take alternative routes. Instead of this unknown that we're all churning in. We don't need that, okay? So my third video is going to get right into, and it's going to be a split screen. I'll have the examples up there.